when you saw that case, because you didn't work with him in the Navy SEALs, right?
No.
What was your first thought? Did you think the media was doing that, or did you think he actually did it?
But they need to, and it just keeps happening, and it's going to keep happening if people don't start digging into this shit, you know. And I understand it because I had the same opinion as you, and I had walked in those shoes, you know, and I just automatically assumed they were guilty. I mean, everybody was out to get these guys, and this goes along the same lines as the Eddie Gallagher case too, but it just goes to show you cannot trust what you're watching on the news. You can't trust it. There's so much more, you know, and these people are being told what to say. They're being censored. They're being told what narrative to push, and then you watch an episode like that and you see how bad it actually is.
Yeah, and I think look, to put on the tinfoil hat with it for a second, I don't think it's much of a tinfoil hat at all, but I think there is a long-standing movement in this country that comes from within it and from outside it to sow division and to look at narratives never with any nuance. So at my gym a few years ago, I used to have like this little game that I didn't even have to play because it was just automatic all the time, every night. But when I would go to cool down on cardio afterwards, there would be 3 TVs on, and they were on mute with captions on, and they were always MSNBC, Fox, and CNN. And I used to just sit there laughing my ass off, watching the 2 on the outside tell the same story the one in the middle is telling, and they're both like, the left and right are calling each other completely evil, and the other side has absolutely no argument and painting entirely different stories about the same goddamn thing. And I'm like, how is this not programmed? Like, there's no way this is not literally programmed in, because it makes money and it also accomplishes a bigger goal, which is you make people fight over all these, not to play down some stories, but let's call it what it is, day-to-day, smaller, one-dimensional type stories, so that whatever the hell they're doing in the back scenes that they don't want you to see, they distract you from by getting you pissed off on all this stuff.
I mean, that's very true. The media is manipulated in so many ways. You know, it's an advertising platform that's for sale.
That's a good way to put it. It's good. I have another theory on this. Would love to get your thoughts on it, but I call it the front page theory. And I'm sure someone else has come up with this before, but it's just something I thought about talking with a few people. But if you look at all the major publications that now will see like tweets with their headlines when it's funny, because you're like, they actually printed this. You think like New York Times, Washington Post, whatever. I think there are a lot of good journalists at these places. I think that those journalists don't get on the front page very often, though. When I've talked with other journalist friends of mine who are in the field, the way it seems to come out to me is that if you break down the entire system, you basically have 80-20. On the 80% side, 50 of those 80 are really good journalists who really care and just want to get to the truth. 30 of those 80, they care, they're just not very talented. And then you get the other 20. And the other 20 are those front page whores who will write whatever they got to write, or say whatever they got to say, or report whatever they got to report according to whatever predisposed narrative there is at that fucking time to get their ass on the front page. And I don't have to name names. You can go pull up the New York Times. You go pull up the Washington Post. There are people who are just on there all the time, and they're constantly, you know, in beautiful prose, I might add, reporting things where it's like, well, what the who wrote this headline? Yeah. Who wrote this paragraph right here? And to me, what it's doing is it's destroying the faith in the media as a whole, righteously so, but it's also taking away from a lot of the brilliant people, including some I've had in here, like Andy Greenberg and Joby Warwick, who write at some of these places and do a tremendous job and have for years. But once, you know, you have that next to your name, there's a subset of the population that through past events is going to be like, oh, can't listen to that no matter what. And you get looped in with it.
Well, that's the beauty of podcasting, right? This is taking over the news. It is taking over the news. Yeah. And it's the only place that you can come and get your your message out uninterrupted, unfiltered, no agenda, depending on which podcast you pick. But I mean, these long form interviews, I mean, they're diving deep. You're diving deep. I'm diving deep. Concrete's diving deep. There's a handful of podcasts out there that are getting truth out, and they're getting new ideas out, new opinions out that aren't being heard, and that's shaking things up. And look what's happening. The media it's crashing.
Yeah.
It's crashing. People are losing confidence in the media, and more and more I'm seeing in comments and reviews and emails and messages, everything, that people are coming to podcasts, especially my podcast. I mean, because that's the messages I read, obviously, but they're coming there that's where they're getting their news. That's where they're getting truth. That's where they're diving deep into these subjects, and it's shaking things up, and it's going to take people like us to do that.
So Shawn was here for over 4 hours talking with me, and there was another part that we ended up recording that is different from everything we discussed in this episode that I do not want to cut. So I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to put it out as its own separate, probably about 1 hour long conversation sometime in the week after I record this podcast. So just keep your eyes open for that. It's really, really good, and I will see you when that drops. 100%. But actually, you had mentioned this earlier. Your friend Eddie Gallagher, that whole case, that was another one you litigated on your podcast.
Look, trying to wreck you a spot, and I look over, and they had little kids' heads on the spikes. There was dead bodies all over the place. We had our terp blown in half. I got pulled into the Mass Chief of Trade and said, "Hey, you're under investigation."
So when you saw that case, because you didn't work with him in the Navy SEALs, right?
No.
What was your first thought? Did you think the media was doing that, or did you think he actually did it?
I thought he did it.
Really?
Yeah, I thought he did it. Even when there were people that I respected that say he didn't, there were people that I respected more who were still who were saying that he did do it. And because those guys were in, I thought, well, they have more information than I do, and I really value the information that I get from some of the guys that I still know inside of there. But when they told me that, I was like, definitely, if they're saying that, he's guilty. And
can you tell people what he was accused of specifically?
Oh, he was accused of a couple of things. He was accused of the main thing was the one thing that I didn't get, and this was the main thing, was he was accused of killing an ISIS fighter in war.
It's supposed to be a good thing.
Right? But once again, you got half the country jumping on this train. Let's think about what ISIS was doing to us and all these other terrorist organizations. They're cutting our dicks off after we're dead, stuffing them in our mouth. They're raping little kids. They put little kids in cages and burn them alive. They chop off news reporters' heads on international television. They put people in cages and slowly drown them in the river. So why anybody in this country would be fucking outraged that a Navy SEAL killed an ISIS fighter is beyond me. It is. It's beyond me. I just can't think of any circumstance that somebody wouldn't be happy that one of those people were eliminated off the earth. So we'll get through that, but that was the main thing, right? He killed an ISIS fighter.
You stabbed him to death or something?
Stabbed him to death.
But you thought you thought he was guilty talking to the guys whose opinions you value. So even though it was an ISIS fighter, you thought there was something bad to it?
No, I didn't. That always confused me. But then if you go back in the media, then when that didn't stick, then it was, oh, he's killing women, oh, he's killing children, he's killing all these people, and it was like, well, this didn't stick, so let's add this, let's add this, let's add this. And anyway, so because I I had valued the opinions and the information that I was getting from former teammates of mine who are still in. I mean, I figure they've got to know. I mean, what the hell do I know? I've been out for over 10 years at this point. Close to, anyways. Then when I got him on the show, much like the Blackwater episode, I realized, I was like, this guy got steamrolled too, you know? And even after actually, I don't want to say that because I'm not 100%. I don't remember the exact timeline of the case, but I do. He may have been. It may have been thrown out after this, but even a Marine came out and said, "I'm the one that killed him."
Oh, they killed the fighter.
Yes, I'm the one that killed the fighter, which I believe that's what got it thrown out. But the Navy was still on him. They tried to pull his trident, which is it's the SEAL insignia that you wear as a Navy SEAL. They tried to take his retirement. And that's where Trump kept having to step in and say, give the fucking guy his retirement back. Give the fucking guy his rank back. Give him his trident back. You're not going to do this. We already went through this. It's been through court, you know, and they had witnesses lying on the stand. And so when he came in for the interview, like I said, it was very similar to the Blackwater episode where I'm going to be honest, I was disgusted that I was ever a SEAL for weeks after that. I couldn't believe that I had spent time within a community that fucking burns their own people like that for killing an ISIS fighter. I mean, it was...
Do you think they just bought what they were sold, kind of like you did, though?
That is what happened. They had upper head shed throughout the SEAL teams running around telling the knuckle draggers like me, hey, we have video of them doing this. It's all going to come out in court.
But they didn't.
They didn't have any fucking video of it. Nothing came out in court. It was all lies. All of it.
That's where you lose me, when you start like making claims about stuff you know is not true. Like, oh, we got video. No, you don't.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that he was a particularly hardo, known as like a hardo within the community, but also within like the training realm. So some of the guys didn't like him because of that. And so perhaps that's maybe why some of the people who were quote unquote witnesses were pressing that, oh yeah, he probably did that for sure. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.